Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Gretchen, and today I just wanted to take a couple minutes to have a little chat about the upcoming Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist announcement. So today is April the 23rd, and the shortlist is going to be announced tomorrow. And although it is being announced tomorrow, I think it's being announced super early in the UK. And when I say super early, I think it's like 8 a.m., but that would be 3 a.m. for me. And I am certainly not going to be up at 3 a.m. I mean, I might be, who knows? But I know that by the time I wake up tomorrow, the shortlist will be available. So I have been watching a couple videos from a lot of the content creators that I know that follow the Women's Prize, and normally when it comes to predicting the shortlist, at this point in time, I like to have had more of the books read. I have finished 9 of them, and I am almost done with a 10th, and I'm about halfway through my 11th. So there's a total of 5 books that I have not really got into. So I don't have a whole lot to say about them. Now, I did read at least a chapter of each of them just to kind of get the tone and see, you know, kind of what vibes I was getting. And based on a lot of what I was hearing from some other booktubers that I trust, I do think that some of the ones that I have not read are definitely going to be ones that make that list. So when I am coming up with my predictions list, please know that there are, I think, going to be at least 2 that I have yet to read. So, you know, take my opinion about them with a grain of salt, because I have not yet completed them. Although I have started them, I don't know enough about them yet to fully know. But I have heard a lot of good things about the 2 in particular that I think are going to make it. So first and foremost, I just want to talk about the books that I have read, and I will hold up my little pile here. So I've read Soldier Sailor, which I don't have a physical copy of. It's not available in the States yet. I was thankfully able to get an ARC through NetGalley, so thank you NetGalley for that. We have Western Lane, we have Hangman, we have Ordinary Human Failings, we have Restless Dolly Maunder, we have 8 Lives of a Century Old Trickster, we have The Blue Beautiful World, River East, River West, and then we have And Then She Fell. And then I am almost 3/4 of the way through A Trace of Sun. So I definitely think I have a good grasp on, you know, the book and where it's taking me and what it's delivering. And then I am almost done with Enter Ghost. So even though I haven't finished those 2, I'm still pretty confident that I have a good grasp of what is going on with those. So I do also, before I get into the books that I think are going to make the short list, I just want to call out a couple books specifically. First and foremost, I just want to have a little conversation again about Western Lane. If you follow my channel, you know this is not a book that I get along well with. I read it for the Booker Prize when it was longlisted for that. I read it again when it was shortlisted, and I didn't change my opinion about it. So I did decide for the Women's Prize that I was not going to read it again. And I'm kind of struggling with whether or not this book will actually make the shortlist. This book is beloved by so many people, and so many readers get along with this, and this is kind of the last hurrah for this book to win a prize, because I think that because it was released last year, it's kind of reaching the end of eligibility for a bunch of the prizes, if not all of them. So I'm very curious to see if this is going to be the moment for Western Lane, because so many people have enjoyed it and loved it, and I don't think it has received any well-known book awards. So I'm curious to know whether or not it makes the shortlist this time. The other books that I'm really kind of intrigued by and wondering what the fate of them will be are books like Hangman. So Hangman was such a disappointment for me, and I didn't necessarily get along with this book, but the people that didn't like it really didn't like it, and the people that loved it really loved it. So this is another one of those books that I could honestly say that it may have been me. I may have missed something along the way. And if it does end up making the short list, like I did with Western Lane and last year's Booker, even though I didn't get along with it, I'm willing to give it a second chance just to see if maybe I missed something in that first read. So I'm curious to see if it makes the short list. Part of me doesn't want it to, because I don't really want to read it again. But if it does, I will be open to that reread just to make sure that I didn't miss anything. Now I just want to take a minute to talk about the books that I definitely don't think that we are going to see on the short list. And I'm a little nervous about saying this because I could be completely wrong, and it's just a risk that I take by stating my opinions about certain books. And I think that the only one that is glaring at me saying there's no way that this book is going to make it is going to be The Blue Beautiful World by Karen Lord. I have filmed my video for this. I just haven't had a chance to edit it yet and get it out there. But this was not a book that I particularly got along with, and there are so many reasons which I discuss in that review, but I just think that although I appreciate what this book is doing, I think that this book being part of a series, being the third book within a series that is supposedly a standalone, but I question the validity of that statement as it being a standalone after reading it. I just think that this book is too controversial to make it to the short list, just because I don't think as a reader you could fully grasp what was truly going on, only having read the third book after there were two books that were already released that established the world. So now I want to talk about those books that I think have a really solid chance of making it to the short list. So now I want to talk about the books that I think have a really solid chance of making the short list. First and foremost, I'm going to go with Soldier Sailor, because this is the women's prize and it tackles the struggles of motherhood. I think that it is very on brand for the women's prize, and not only that, but it was just a fantastic book that had a lot to say, and I don't think that there is a mother out there that is going to read this book that doesn't have some type of reaction or response to this book. Whether you love this book or you hate this book, this is one of those books that will have you feeling all of your emotions, and it is going to be one that sticks with the reader for a very long time. So just looking at it from that standpoint, I think it really has a solid chance. And then too, when you're looking at it from a literary perspective, it is beautifully written, the prose is gorgeous, and the formatting and the way that the book was set up and structured, I just think was really definitely on par as well. So Soldier Sailor is my first prediction. So the second book that I hope makes the shortlist is Ordinary Human Failings by Megan Nolan. Now, this book, it's another book that tackles a very tough subject matter. It involves the death of a child, and there is a child, I believe that is 10, that is suspected of the death of the other child. So it is not a light read. It is definitely tackling heavy subjects, and it also tackles the idea of how, you know, we as a public use tragedy and horrible things that happen as a form of entertainment, because we have a journalist that is following the case and trying to get to the bottom of the family that the suspect is a part of, trying to paint that family in a negative light and really kind of just paint them out to be a horrible group of people. And I really think that this is an important novel. I think that it tackles a lot of topics that are relevant to today. And even though this is set back in the 90s, it is almost like foreshadowing where we will eventually end up in today's world, where constantly we are barraged with all of these horrible, just devastating stories in the media, and they do become a form of entertainment. So I think that this book is important. It has a lot to say, and I would love to see this book make the shortlist. Now, the other book that I think has a really good chance, and this is one of the books that I haven't finished yet, but I'm almost there, and that is going to be Enter Ghost by Isabella Hammad. Now, this book is definitely of its time in the moment, and with everything that is going on politically with Israel and Palestine, I think that it would be a very brave choice for the Women's Prize to shortlist this novel. And I was actually, I'm going to be perfectly honest, if I haven't already mentioned this in my reaction video when they posted the long list, I was really shocked that the Women's Prize longlisted this book, not because I don't think that the book had a right to be here. It absolutely does. It's a fantastic book, but the Women's Prize doesn't tend to really dabble in politics. It seems to usually play it safe and not ruffle too many feathers. So when I saw that this book had made it, I almost immediately thought that this book has the potential to go very far, because the judges were taking a chance even putting it in the long list to begin with. So I think that this book has a really great chance, and I would not be surprised if this book actually ended up being the winner. And what a statement that would really say if the Women's Prize was confident enough about this book to put this out as their ultimate winner. So my third pick, Enter Ghost by Isabella Hammad. Now, the next book I was really on the fence about, and I went back and forth about whether or not I would say that Western Lane would make the short list. And I know as soon as I say that I'm not putting it on my short list, it's almost a guarantee that it will be there. But instead, I am going to go with And Then She Fell by Alicia Elliott. Now, this was a book that I did not particularly get along with myself. It was a good read, it was an enjoyable read, but there were a lot of things about this that I think could have been handled differently. And I also think that there were potentially a lot of problematic things about this book as well. I haven't done my official review for this yet, but that will be to come. But I Also know that this is a very polarizing book. I have not heard a whole lot of middle of the road kind of reviews for it. It's very much a book that is talked about very negatively or very positively. And I am one of the weird ones where I do kind of fall in the middle, but I really haven't seen a whole lot of, people responding in the same way. So because I'm in the middle and everything else is so polarizing, it makes me want to take a chance on this book and say that it might make the shortlist. I think this book has a lot of very important things to say. It has a lot of important discussions, and this is a book that I finished it several weeks ago and it is still sitting with me. So, anytime a book can kind of burrow into your head like that and take up residence, I think that it's a book that has some type of merit to it, whether it's good or whether it's bad. I definitely think that I can understand why it made the long list, and I can definitely see there being very good arguments from the judges as to why this book, compared to the others, has a spot on the short list. So, and I guess we'll find out tomorrow, but I would definitely not be surprised to see this book on the list. Now, the other two books that I think are going to make the short list are not books that I have read, but like I said, I've been watching a lot of other videos and trying to kind of piece together what other books that I haven't read are really making a name for themselves and really getting the booktube community that follows the Women's Prize talking about them. And the first one that I think is going to make it to the short list is In Defense of the Act. This is a book that has so many people talking, and I have yet to hear a negative review of this book. I don't think that anybody's really torn it apart. There may have been some, middle of the road reviews, but for the most part, I always hear from reviewers that this was the most surprising book on the long list. They went into this not thinking that they were going to enjoy it and ended up really getting along with it. So I have really high hopes that this book makes it onto the short list, and it gives me a book that I haven't read to look forward to that has made it. But I know this book tackles a very tough subject matter. I know it's dealing with suicide and a defense of why suicide is appropriate or potentially a good thing, and I'm very interested to see how that subject is handled. And from what I have heard, it's done in a very respectful way, and yeah, I would love to see a book that tackles such a tough subject matter and does it with humor make the short list. So we'll see what happens with this one. And the last book that I think that has a really good chance of making the short list is Brotherless Night by V.V. Ganeshananthan. And this is another one of those books that I am not hearing anything negative about. Everyone that I have watched videos for that has read it has had generally positive things to say about this book. And this is also a favorite among a lot of people that have been following the Women's Prize. So I think that for it to be so respected, and for it to be another one of those books where you're not really hearing too much negativity about, that it really does stand a chance. I have been looking forward to getting to this one for a while. I finally got my hands back on it from my library, so I am very excited now, and I am just looking for that shortlist announcement and this to be on it for me to prioritize it amongst the ones that I have yet to read. Now, Now, I will say that I think it's important that you know the other 3 books that I haven't read that I need to, and that is the Maiden, the Wren, and Nightbloom. Now, I very strongly considered putting the Wren on there, but I already had 2 pieces of Irish fiction, so I didn't think that an Enright being the 3rd would make sense, having 3 Irish authors. Although I don't know how much thought goes into, oh, we can't have, you know, more than 2 Irish authors, or, you know, it really truly should just be about the quality of the books. But I tend to think that sometimes those discussions do happen, and I think that it could be a factor. Although I will say, if Anne Enright, if I'm thinking correctly, if Anne Enright were to get shortlisted and win, I think she would be the only author to have ever won both the Women's Prize and the Booker. I could be wrong about that. I'll have to look into that, but it would be really cool to have that finally happen. But I just haven't heard enough positive things about the Wren. I have heard really great reviews, and some people have said it's their favorite book of the year, but it just hasn't been coming from enough people. As a matter of fact, I've heard more mediocre things about the book than positive, but I honestly think that it's going to be a book that I really get along with, so I am still looking forward to getting to it regardless. The Maiden and Nightbloom, aside from reading the first chapter, I really don't know a whole lot about those books yet, and I'm still looking forward to getting to them, but I just haven't heard enough buzz about them from people that have read them in order to want to put them on my shortlist. So there is my shortlist prediction. Just to review, we had Soldier Sailor, we had In Defense of the Act, we have Ordinary Human Failings, Enter Ghost, and Then She Fell, and Brotherless Night. And we'll see how well I do. I don't do this because I think that I'm right, or I absolutely think that if the shortlist is different, that the judges are crazy or wrong. I just do this because it's fun. I absolutely love watching videos like this. I find it very interesting to see and hear kind of everybody's thought process on what books worked for them, what didn't, and the process that they go through to determine and put themselves in the minds of the judges to see where they would be and what they would be thinking and how they would potentially come up with the list. And I think that at the end of the day, this is just a fun little way to get more involved with these book prizes. So I am really interested to hear if any of you have really strong feelings about certain books that should make the short list, or books that have absolutely no business being on the short list. And I'm also curious to see if you guys are starting to think about what your winner might be. I know in my mind, I already have in the back of my head what I think is going to win, but like I said, I still have a few more books to read, and that opinion might completely change, but it's still fun to speculate and it's still fun to talk about. So go ahead and leave any of your predictions or your lists in the comments, and I am likely not going to do a reaction video, although who knows, I may decide to once I see what the list is. It might completely throw me for a loop and I might feel the need to, but I think what I'll do is I'll just continue to do my long list reviews, and then when we get closer to the announcement, we'll review the shortlist titles, and I will do an overall prediction of what I think the winner will be based on that official shortlist. So there's definitely more Women's Prize for Fiction content to come, and until we read again, bye.